Welcome to another episode of the High Agency Podcast. So today we will be talking about something that frankly feels a little bit like looking in a mirror and realizing your reflection is building a house you never actually asked for. We are digging into the architecture of self.
Yeah, and I want to be clear right off the bat. This isn't about, feng shui or interior design.
Yeah.
The source material we've pulled for today is, well, it's honestly pretty brutal. It's a long-form article that starts with a premise that just makes you sit up straight. Most of us are objectively terrible architects of our own lives.
Terrible architects. Okay, that is a heavy way to start a morning. It feels a bit personal.
It does, doesn't it? But the core thesis here is that we are building every single day. You're building a career, a reputation, a set of habits, a future self. But the argument is that we're usually building without our own blueprints. We're just laying bricks where we're told to lay them.
And then we wonder why the structure feels unstable.
Or why it feels like a prison.
Yes. That's the image that really stuck with me from the reading. You work so hard, you follow all the rules, you build this life, and then you stand inside it and realize, wait a minute, I don't actually want to live here. It's claustrophobic.
Exactly. And the mission of this deep dive is to figure out why standard self-help usually fails to fix that. Why the whole wake up at 5 a.m. advice or the shiny new productivity apps, why they don't actually solve the real problem.
Right, because usually we just try to, optimize the prison cell rather than leaving it. So we're going to talk about how to actually tear down a faulty foundation to reconstruct a life that matches who you are actually meant to become. So let's unpack this. The article starts with this concept of the inherited blueprint. Break that down for us.
So the idea is that nobody starts with a blank page. We like to think we're original. We like to think we're these autonomous agents. But by the time you're, say, 18, your blueprint has already been drawn for you.
Oh.
It's drawn by your parents, your teachers, the economy, the culture you grew up in.
It's the standard path, right? We all know the rhythm. It's sort of embedded in us. Excel in school, get into a good college, land a good job with benefits.
Work for 40 years, maybe buy a house if the market allows, retire, and then die.
And post about it on social media the whole time to prove you're winning.
Exactly. And look, on paper, that sounds safe. It sounds logical. It keeps the economy running. But the source argues that the problem isn't that people fail to follow this blueprint. The tragedy is that they follow it too well.
That's the trap, isn't it? You get the job, you get the mortgage, you get the car, and you realize it feels like a performance you are just tired of rehearsing.
Yes, you have everything you're supposed to want, but you feel hollow. And usually when people hit that wall, that midlife or quarter-life crisis, their first instinct is to renovate.
Renovate, meaning I hate my life, so I need a new job, or I need a new partner.
Or I need to move to a new city.
The classic geographical cure.
Precisely. They try to fix the life by changing the furniture or painting the walls. But the source uses this construction analogy that is really powerful. You cannot fix a house that is built on a cracked foundation.
Right.
If you hate your job because you have a fundamental belief that, say, work is suffering, or I must please others to be worthy, getting a new job is just moving into a different building in the same prison.
Because you haven't changed the internal operating system, you've just changed the scenery.
Right. The article breaks this down into 3 layers of construction to explain why we failed to change. Imagine a pyramid.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The top layer, the tiny tip of the pyramid, is actions and habits. This is where everyone focuses, I'm going to start running, I'm going to write in a journal, I'm going to quit sugar.
It's usually where I start every January 1st, and usually where I stop by January 15th.
Exactly. And it's surface level. That's the paint on the walls. Below that is layer 2. Identity.
Okay.
These are the stories we tell ourselves. I'm an introvert. I'm not creative. I'm bad with money.
Those are powerful. They feel like facts, but they're actually just stories.
Correct. And then the bottom, the base of the pyramid, layer 3 is worldview. This is the bedrock. This is what you believe about reality, possibility, and value. The key insight here is that lasting change has to be bottom up.
Not top down.
No. If you try to change your habits, layer 1, without changing your worldview, layer 3, the structure collapses. You have to dig down to the foundation.
Okay, but digging that deep sounds exhausting and frankly a little scary. The source calls this a worldview audit. And looking at the questions suggested here, they are uncomfortable.
They're designed to be.
Yeah.
The prompt asks for honest answers, not the answers you'd give at a dinner party to sound smart.
One that really hit me was about the purpose of life. It asks, if you judge by your actions, not your words, what is the purpose of your life?
That's the killer distinction. Not what you say your purpose is. We all say family or impact or legacy. But what do your receipts say? What does your screen time say? Based on actions, for most people, the purpose of life is to avoid discomfort, maintain status, consume entertainment, and distract themselves from the reality of death.
Oof, that is bleak.
It's bleak, but is it inaccurate? We say we value purpose, but our calendar shows we value Netflix and safety. The source is challenging us to upgrade our operating system. It argues we are running industrial age thinking, or OS 1.0, in a modern world.
Okay, let's look at the specs of this upgrade. Because if we are running obsolete software, we need to know what the bugs are. What's the difference between OS 1.0 and OS 2.0?
There are 4 key shifts that the source outlines. The first is scarcity versus abundance. OS 1.0 says, I need to hoard resources. If you win, I lose. It's a zero-sum game.
Which makes sense if you're like a factory worker in 1920 fighting for a shift. If you get the shift, I don't. Simple as that.
Right. But OS 2.0 realizes that in the information age, value is created, not divided. You're going winning doesn't mean I lose. We can both build. Ideas aren't finite resources.
Okay, what's next?
Then there's identity.
Yeah.
OS 1.0 says, I am who I am. It's fixed. Like, I'm just wired this way.
Right. I'm just not a math person. I'm just messy.
Yes. OS 2.0 says, I am who I choose to become. It views identity as fluid. It's software, not hardware. You could rewrite the code.
And the validation piece is huge. This one really resonated with me. OS 1.0 relies on external validation.
Success is impressing people. Success is the job title, the car, the likes. It's looking around the room to see if everyone else thinks you're doing a good job.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
OS 2.0 flips it to internal validation. Success is alignment with your own values. It doesn't matter if people clap. It matters if you built what you intended to build.
I think the one about time is my favorite, though. OS 1.0 thinks I'm running out of time.
Which creates panic.
Yeah.
It leads to rushing and bad decisions.
Yeah.
It leads to that feeling of being behind, even though you don't even know who you're racing.
Exactly.
OS 2.0 sees time as an ally. It understands compound interest, not just in money, but in skills and relationships. If you keep showing up, time works for you. It's the difference between frantic sprinting and a strategic marathon.
That connects directly to the identity trap mentioned in the source. We get stuck in these I am statements. I am not a morning person.
We all have those scripts. But the mechanism described in the article is fascinating. It explains how we trap ourselves. You try something once, say public speaking. You struggle. You feel awkward. Your palms sweat.
Which is normal for the first time. Everyone sucks the first time.
Exactly. But your brain says, warning, pain, social humiliation. So you decide, I'm bad at public speaking. That's the label.
And once you have the label...
Once you have the label, your brain's reticular acclimating system, the filter, starts looking for evidence to confirm it. You stop trying, which makes you worse at it, which confirms the identity. It's a self-reinforcing loop.
So the shift is to stop asking, who am I? Because the answer is usually just a history report of your past limitations.
Right. Start asking, who am I becoming? Every action is a vote. If you go to the gym, you aren't just exercising, you are casting a vote for the identity of someone who takes care of their body. You don't have to be that person yet. You just had to vote for them.
I love that election analogy. You don't need a landslide victory immediately. You just need to start getting the votes in the ballot box. But voting for a new version of yourself is scary because it means the old version has to die a little bit. And that brings us to what I think is the emotional core of this piece, the concept of familiar suffering.
This is such a profound idea. The source argues that given the choice, we will almost always choose familiar suffering over unfamiliar possibility.
Because we know the shape of the suffering, right? We know how to cope with the job we hate. We know the rhythm of the arguments in the dead-end relationship. It sucks, but it's predictable.
And the brain loves predictability. It interprets unknown as predator. It interprets change as danger. The unknown is terrifying because you might fail or look foolish or lose what little you have.
So we stay in the prison because we have the key to the cell, and holding the key feels safer than walking out the door into the fog.
Exactly.
The source suggests a visualization exercise to break this paralysis, the future self exercise. Now, I usually roll my eyes at visualization stuff. It often feels a bit woo-woo, but this one is specific and kind of gritty.
Yeah, you have to actually do it to feel the weight of it. It's not about visualizing a beach and a margarita. It's about visualizing consequences.
The scenario A.
Scenario A. Imagine your life 10 years from now if you change nothing. You keep the same habits, the same fears, the same avoidance. You don't take the risk. You stay in the job. You stay in the relationship.
You have to really look at that person. 10 years older, are they bitter? Are they tired?
Feel their regret. Look at what they missed. That is the ghost of Christmas future, showing you the graveyard of your potential.
And then scenario B.
Scenario B is you start making different choices today. You face the uncertainty. You do the hard thing. You have the awkward conversation. 10 years later, who is that person? What have they built? How do they carry themselves?
The kicker is that both of those futures exist as possibilities right now.
It's Schrodinger's future self. They are both real until you make a choice today that collapses the wave function into one or the other. You are killing one of those versions of yourself every single day by what you choose to do.
But even when we know this, rationally, we know it, we stall, we freeze. The source talks about the resistance algorithm.
The sophisticated excuses. Because your brain is smart, it doesn't just say, I'm scared. If it said that, you might fight back. Instead, it says things that sound logical. It mimics rationality.
I'll start Monday.
Translation, I'm postponing commitment to avoid the pain of starting right now. Monday is a magical land where willpower is infinite.
I need more research. I'm very guilty of this one. I will buy 5 books on a topic before I actually do the thing.
That's a classic. Information gathering as a form of procrastination. It feels like work.
Yeah.
You're reading articles, buying books, highlighting things. You feel productive. But you aren't actually building anything. It's avoidance masking as productivity.
This isn't the right time.
It's never the right time. The conditions will never be perfect.
Yeah.
You're waiting for a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. A version that isn't scared to show up and do the hard work.
But that person doesn't show up.
The source makes it clear. That confident version only exists after you do the hard work.
So how do we beat the algorithm? Do we argue with it?
You can't argue with it. It's a supercomputer designed for survival. It will outsmart you every time.
Yeah.
You just have to realize the algorithm's job is safety, not happiness. You say, thank you, brain, for trying to keep me safe, and then you do the scary thing anyway.
You act before you feel ready.
You have to.
Okay, so let's pivot to the how. We talked about the mindset, the foundation, the fears. Now we need to start framing the house. Segment 4 of our deep dive covers the practical tools, and the first one is the minimum viable life.
I love this because it kills perfectionism. In the tech world, a minimum viable product, or MVP, is the simplest version of a thing you can release just to see if it works. The source applies this to life. Don't try to build the empire on day one.
So if you want to be a writer, don't try to write a best-selling novel this weekend.
No, write 200 words today. That's the minimum viable version. If you want to start a business, don't rent an office and hire staff. Solve one problem for one person and get paid $1.
It's about momentum, not mastery, at least not yet.
Right, you can't steer a parked car. You need to get moving, even if it's slow. But to sustain that momentum, you need fuel. This brings us to the energy audit.
This one hurts a little bit because it requires saying no.
It requires realizing that energy is finite. You don't have unlimited bandwidth. You cannot create a new life if you are hemorrhaging energy on things you don't care about.
The source calls them drainers.
Yes, obligations you hate, performative habits, trying to look cool, people who are constantly negative. You have to ruthlessly cut the drainers to fuel the builders. It's simple physics. You can't build a skyscraper if you're giving away all your steel to passersby.
And if you do that, if you cut the drainers and focus the energy, the source lays out a timeline, the 2-year window.
730 days. The assertion is that 2 years is enough time to completely transform almost anything. You can learn a language to fluency, build a sustainable business, change your body entirely.
But there's a catch.
There's always a catch. The catch is you can't keep your options open. Most people spend 2 years dabbling. They want the new life, but they want to keep the safety of the old life, just in case.
The burning the ships concept.
Exactly. If you want the transformation, you have to commit fully. You can't hedge your bets. If you have a plan B, you will end up using it.
Which leads to the final and probably most intense tool in the source material, generative obsession. Now wait, obsession is usually a bad word. We're told to seek balance. We're told to have a hobby, a job, a social life, and keep it all perfectly juggled.
And the source throws balance out the window. It argues that great things, extraordinary things, are never built through balance. They are built through obsession.
Well, we're not talking about Captain Ahab chasing the whale here. That didn't end well.
No, not obsession driven by fear or revenge. Generative obsession. This is when the work feels like play. You can't not do it. It gives you energy rather than taking it. The advice is to structure your entire life around this obsession.
So it's not workaholism.
Workaholism is working hard to please someone else or to quell anxiety. Generative obsession is working hard because you are fascinated. The source asks, if you love it, why would you want to balance it with things you hate?
Right.
Why pause the game you love playing just because society says you should be doing something else?
That reframing is powerful. It's not imbalance. It's just architecture. It's structuring the support beams where the way actually is.
Precisely. It's about alignment. When you are obsessed in a generative way, you learn faster, you build faster, and you're happier. The balanced life often just means being mediocre at 5 things instead of excellent at 1.
So we've torn down the old house, poured a new foundation, and started framing with these tools. How do we keep the construction site moving every day? Because motivation fades. The outro of the source gives us a daily system.
And this is simple, but execution is key. It's 3 steps to keep you honest. Step 1, morning, set the frame.
This isn't just a to-do list though, right? It's not buy milk, email Bob.
No, a to-do list is reactive. This is active. You ask what would make today meaningful, not just productive, meaningful. Identify the one thing that moves the needle on who you're becoming, the one vote you need to cast today.
Step 2, midday, the reality check.
This is crucial. At noon, you stop. You look around. Am I on track? Or did I get sucked into email and other people's emergencies? Did I slip back into the inherited blueprint? If yes, correct the course immediately. Don't wait for tomorrow.
And step 3, evening, integration.
Review the day. What worked, what didn't, write it down. This closes the loop. It turns experience into wisdom. If you don't review, you're just sleepwalking through the week.
It really comes down to intentionality. Stop defaulting, start designing.
That is the whole ballgame. You are either the architect or you are the bricklayer, following someone else's plans. There is no third option.
So, to the listener, here's the question. Are you ready to stop being a terrible architect? You have the blueprints now. You know about the resistance algorithm trying to keep you small. You know about the minimum viable life.
And remember, the final urgency from the source. 2 years from now, you are going to be somewhere. You will be 2 years older regardless of what you do. The time will pass anyway. The only question is whether you are standing in a life you chose and built brick by brick, or a life you defaulted to because it was easy.
The choice is yours. Start building today. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you in the construction site.